Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome. That, as they say, is that. Marvel Comics. Let's go ahead and get started. It is Tuesday, all you mentees. That means it's time to take an advanced look at all of the collected editions coming out from Marvel Comics the week of November 25th or 26th of 2025. So, let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. Before going any further, a big thank you to the folks at Marvel Comics for sending us advanced copies of these books. Each and every one of these books is due out in the direct market and book market on November 25th or 26th, as I stated earlier. It is a holiday week here in America. I don't know if that's going to mess up anything as far as shipping. It shouldn't, but I have seen in the past where local comic book stores sometimes don't get their shipment on time. We are looking at some latest Epic collections, a new Marvel premiere, a reprint of a book I didn't think they were going to reprint. Interesting that they did that. And of course, the biggest hype that is in video games right now. That's not Obscura or what is Expedition 39? I'm so out of the loop, guys. I don't even know. It's 33 or 39. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Marvel Rivals. That is the game I actually played a couple times with my brothers because I had to do that art book overview for Dark Horse. But anyway, we have the comic here. And then, of course, the latest Marvel Masterwork with one of the greatest runs of all time. So smash that like button. If you're just curious about one or two of these books, the description of the video will have the timestamps. Let's go ahead and start today with, actually, Marvel Rivals Infinity. Okay, Marvel Rivals Infinity. The first thing I want to say about this book is the actual dimensions of this. This does feel like, or looks like rather, that it is a digest size dimension. So here it is compared to a trade paperback dimension book. So it's a little bit smaller, but also retailing for this one is $15.99. Hey, Jeff, which actually is a big key player in this. Here is the breakdown. You have Paul Allure, of course, writing most of the story. There's also the Demon's Day story in here by Peach Momoko. But you have Luca Claretti doing most of the artwork, Nico Leon, Iguara, and then down here is Yuji Kaku doing the art and story, and Mitsuyasu Sakai doing the story here, and Ryosei Yamada doing the art for Sounds of Victory. And the artwork for the cover is by Yuki Kaku. Man, that looks killer. This book contains Marvel Rivals one-shot from 2025, Marvel Rivals Hellfire Gala one-shot, the Marvel Rivals King in Black one-shot, and Marvel Rivals Ignite one-shot. There's also a Marvel Swimsuit Special, Friends, Foes, and Rivals. Just the swimsuit skins for the Marvel Rival characters. This game is nuts. Now, this is not set in continuity, by the way. This is not set in the 616 universe. As a matter of fact, at the very, very beginning, you have this character that immediately looks like, what would you call it? A gender bend version of Galactus. And this is Galacta. So Galacta is introducing you really quickly to this world. This, by the way, did I mention it has 152 pages? I think I did. In introducing you to this world, you're immediately thrown into the action. I assume this is mainly for people that have loved the video games and just want to come and explore more of the stories. I do have videos for that, by the way, if you're looking for that. But this is more of set in the video game realm and jumping from location to location as teams. So you have it set in Tokyo, Japan, 2099, where you have the fractured web of life and Destiny, that's what it's called. And it's going into all kinds of chaos. And that's what's happening at the beginning here. And that's what the characters are split up and fighting each other for. And you also have the Hellfire Gala one-shot. And the Hellfire Gala one-shot is very similar to what happened in the Hellfire Gala comics, where you have everybody dressing up, so they come with their outfits. And I think that's the story where Emma Frost was first introduced. Again, this is just your basic brawler type of story. If you've ever read any of the Street Fighter comics from Udon Studios, part of that charm of reading those is that, oh, you already know these characters, they're fighters. They're just going to pick a fight with each other and start fighting. And a lot of that happens through here with, of course, that Marvel flair. And Paul Allor does a great job. He's no stranger to IP. Actually, he actually wrote a Street Fighter, what was it? Street Fighter Ninja Turtles comic. So it kind of makes sense that he would write something like this. And you are introduced to new characters as the story progresses. When you get to the King in Black storyline, you'll have new characters that were not available before. And again, there are reasons why they're separated by teams. And it's all explained by a fourth wall breaking Galacta, who's adorable and acknowledges the fact that she could be related to the other big guy from the 616 universe. But you can find out for yourself. This is a little bit different over here because this is the Demon Days version of the story. So this is Demon Days Kozute Iwa by Peach Momoko, who of course does the story and art of all the Demon Days and the Demon Wars, and right now working on Ultimate X-Men. So it's a little bit of those characters that have shown up as the skins in the video game. And by the skins, it means like the version of their outfits that they wear. Like a lot here, let me just show you like the Marvel Rivals swimsuit skins right here. This is courtesy of Natisse Games. Of course, it's the maker. You have Psylocke and you've got the Punisher. So, of course, Frank Castle has to wear that low-key. And then you have Luna Snow, who has become a huge character because of the game. Her and the new Iron Fist. Like, these characters that Penny Parker, of course, that might have to do with Spider-Verse. But a lot of these characters you may not have heard of, people are asking questions about because they want to see more stories with them. Luna Snow is one of those characters that hardly has any stories collected for her, as well as the new Iron Fist. In case you don't know, I don't want to spoil who the new Iron Fist is. There's a little bit of a tease as what's to come next. And then the role-playing game that they're releasing. And then you get free digital content right here with this. But that is Marvel Rivals Infinity. Next up is Hawkeye, My Life as a Weapon. This is the Marvel Premiere collection. So it's another one that's a little bit smaller in scale compared to a trade paperback right here. So it's a little bit smaller in scale and also a little bit cheaper. This one is $14.99. And this collects the Hawkeye 2012 series 1 through 11 plus Young Avengers Presents number 6. Here's all the praise for Hawkeye, and believe me, this is a book that definitely gets a lot of praise. I have talked about this book, or this run, several times on the channel. We've done an old reader, new reader. I've done an overview of the original Omni, an overview of the new printing, and it's the Kelly Thompson run and the Jeff Lemire run are some of my most wanted Omnis to be collected. But breaking it down, Matt Fraction's the writer. You have David Aja, Javier Pulido, Steve Lieber, just to name a few of your artists. And then you have the Chris Alepolis as the letterer, Matt Hollingsworth, and Francesco Francavilla as the colorist. Now, there's also, because collected in here is Young Avengers Presents number 6. That has artwork in there by Alan Davis. There's an introduction here by Matt Fraction. It's a new introduction talking about why it was Clint Barton to just become as popular as Captain America and Thor and Iron Man instead of somebody like Stingray. I think it's a really interesting introduction for someone like him to talk about this, what makes him so appealing to a lot of people. What I find really cool is that they're doing introductions again, and I really, really hope that they take that method and put it in their big books, like their omnibus editions. Because I love reading introductions in the Marvel Masterworks, which we'll look at a new one here in a little bit. But I think it's just something awesome for a writer or an artist to go, or even the editors that worked on the books, to go back and revisit those stories. Collected in here are issues of Hawkeye, the 2012 relaunch, 1 through 11, Young Avengers Presents issue number 6. The book has 280 pages and again retails for $14.99. I've talked about this a lot on my channel, but in case you're not familiar with it, this is your down-to-earth story of Clint Barton. Yes, he's an Avenger during this time, and he is starting off having a really bad day. He's just gotten out of the hospital, and he's gotten some really bad injuries during his Avengers Day job, which is what we're going to call that, because that's what he calls it here. And then ends up running into the Tracksuit Mafia. Bro, you remember those guys, bro? Oh, believe me, that you'll either love it or begin to get on your nerves immediately. You're going to be hearing that a lot through here. And then he ends up becoming responsible for a dog that got hit by a car that might be partially responsible, or the responsibility may lie on Clint Barton. And what he ends up doing through here is ending up owning an apartment complex where the tenants all kind of look to him, not just for security and safety, but also to pay him, and then whenever they have problems, they come and see him with the apartment. In here, you're going to see an array of different characters. Primarily, your second character here is Hawkeye. No, I'm not repeating his name again. There's Clint Barton Hawkeye during this time, and then Kate Bishop Hawkeye, who comes from the world of the Young Avengers. That's why Young Avengers Presents 6 is included in here, because that's where, I think that's actually the first issue they first interacted with each other. She becomes a huge player in all of this. And yes, the pizza dog story is in here. You have a lot of his old flames showing up, like Natasha Romanoff, but she is not alone because his ex-wife shows back up. And again, this is set in continuity, but also it could be read as a standalone. So you can 100% see why Marvel decided to make this into a Marvel Premiere story, because it's one of those that you can gift somebody. The Hawkeye TV show, the one that came out in 2024, I think, might have been 2023. My goodness, time flies. That is a lot based on this. A lot of those stories were based on this. You have the clown assassin there, and the pizza dog story. Ugh. Deserves all the praise it gets. And then this is the Young Avengers story, which is drawn by Alan Davis. And then in the back, you actually get extras. I know when people talk about the differences between the Marvel Premiere and the DC Compact is $9.99, so that's a big difference, right? The Marvel Premieres are $14.99. Marvel Premiere will have extras in the back, though, whereas the DC Compact books just give you the chunk of the story, all the story, with no extras. And we will look at the build of this. You even get the variant cover and end sheets, which is just kind of crazy for a trade paperback. So this one does have, here, let's fix the camera so you can see, glued binding and printed in this matte paper stock. Almost like no, it is matte paper stock. And again, this book has a total of 280 pages and retails for $14.99. Wolverine, The Death and Life of Sabretooth. Now, I mentioned that Marvel reprinted this book. It is a reprint with a new name, though. This one is called Wolverine, The Death and Life of Sabretooth. I think previously it was just called Wolverine Sabretooth, and it was released both in trade paperback and in oversized hardcover format. And both of those have been long out of print, and now it is back in print. It is Jeff Loeb's, joined by Simone Bianchi, Andre Silvestri doing some of the inks and washes later on. You have Jimmy Betancourt doing the lettering with Albert Desechny, and then Mark Morales doing the inks for Chapter 7, and then these wonderful colorists like Paul Mounts and Nori Hollowell. And this is collecting Wolverine 50 to 55, that's from 2003, and Wolverine 310 to 313. The book has 264 pages and retails for $34.99. Before anyone freaks out, where are issues 56 through 309? Don't worry, it's just that they've gone back to the legacy numbers. But you're right, there are missing issues, not by Jeff Loeb, though, because after Jeff Loeb's run is when we immediately jump into the era of Jason Aaron. So after he leaves, it's Jason Aaron's run. And then, after Jason Aaron leaves, is when we start getting some stories by Cullen Bunn. And then Jeff Loeb decides to come back and team up again with Simone Bianchi, and kind of bring in a character that was teased a little bit through the pages of Wolverine at the very beginning in that first part. I think it was called Evolution is what this part is called. Spoilers, by the way, for some of the stuff that's happened in here. So there is a little bit of a gap in between. I'm not saying there isn't. There is. The Jason Aaron run goes in between there. And then, of course, those other stories from Rot, like the ones by Cullen Bunn, that go in between the Jeff Loeb Sabretooth stories. Basically, Wolverine wants to just have one last fight with Sabretooth. This is it. This is the last time he's had it up to here. He's got flashbacks of the cabin. He's got flashbacks of his birthday. He's got flashbacks of all the horrible things Sabretooth has done in the past, especially to Silver Fox. He's had it. But he comes with a particular saying that kind of triggers some memories in both of them. And these are both characters, of course, that have fake memory implants. Their heads have been messed with by the government, by secret projects. And there's something in the kind of like the backbone that is building towards something big, or perhaps something that's always been there and no one has ever noticed. And that is this character known as Romulus. So Evolution, as the first storyline is called, is basically the last fight between Wolverine and Sabretooth. The character of Sabretooth during this time is very important to note that he was running with the X-Men. As a matter of fact, he was a part of Mike Carey's X-Men along with Mystique and Cable. So that's why you see Wolverine at the very beginning break into the X-Mansion and just pass Rogue up like, I need to talk to Sabretooth. So that's what this is, and introducing us to the concept of Romulus. There are some character deaths in here. No, Betsy is not one of them. She's too tough for that. Wait, is it Betsy during this time? Yes, it is Betsy during this time. It gets a little confusing because of the whole Quanon and Betsy thing. But anyway, there are some character deaths in here, but if you've been reading Krakoa, you know some of those characters are back already, so spoilers, non-spoilers for that stuff. But the story does kind of end in a little bit of a cliffhanger. Another thing that happens in between the Evolution story and the other story that is collected in here, let's actually get to that part right there, is when he decides to come back. The Sabretooth Reborn story is, we also had stories from Daniel Way in the pages of Wolverine Origin, where the character of Romulus had appeared. So we finally have this whole character of Romulus. Remus, I think, is introduced to these pages right here, and that is that redhead. She may or may not have ties to the character of Romulus, but this storyline is called Sabretooth Reborn. So Wolverine is trying to find more things out about this new guy named Romulus, who might have been the manipulator of everything gone wrong in his life. And then we have a whole mystery as to who Remus is, and is it true that Sabretooth is going to be reborn during this time? And why? Who is bringing him back? Although the character has already been reborn many times, because, as we know, he was one of the Marauders, and Mr. Sinister always kept those DNAs and always brought back the Marauders. But in this storyline, it is this character that perhaps died in the Evolution story and then maybe came back in the Reborn story. In the back, we do have some extras. So you have the Jeff Loeb and Simone Bianchi talk about Wolvie. And then we have one of my, actually, I do really like, I think it's the cover to issue 55. They didn't do a lot of variants back then, but I had to go to the comic store to get it. And I was done getting single issues. But when somebody told me about the variant, I'm like, done. And it's this one here by Greg Land. I love it. Of course, it's a take on the classic EC cover, but it's Wolverine with Sabretooth's head. That's awesome. Yeah, it is issue 55. And then we have pages. Oh, this is the original artwork. Of course, Bianchi does painted art. And now, by the time we get into the 300s, there are more variant covers. You have Ed McGuinness and Stephen Platt over here, Lionel Francis Yu, Jeffrey Scott Campbell, Arthur Adams, and then this right here. 264 pages, $34.99. X-Manhunt. That's it. There's no volume 1s. There's nothing. It's just X-Manhunt, not X-Men, X-Manhunt, which surprises me. This is the official first crossover of the new X-Men era. So from the Ashes era, this is the first official crossover between all of the titles. And one thing I want to note is that for some reason, if you look here in the back, actually, let's just look here at the credits. You have people like Gail Simone, Jackson Lansing, Murewa Ayodele, Jen McKay, Mark Russell, also Colin Kelly, of course, Eve Ewing, Jeffrey Thorne are the writers. Javier Garon and Francesco Mortarino, Luciano Vecchio, Netho Diaz, and Carmen Carnero, Marcos Toe are some of the artists. But in here, you have Uncanny X-Men 11, NYX 9, Storm 6, X-Men 13, X-Factor 8, Exceptional X-Men 7, X-Force 9, X-Manhunt Omega. For some reason in the solicits, Exceptional X-Men is left out. I'm not sure why, but it is in here. People were asking me on my Saturday live stream a couple of weeks ago why that's left out. And I was like, oh, no, I guess that, I don't know why. But it's not. It's in here. Spoilers, by the way, for what's happened previously for this particular era. I have to talk about the setup. And part of the setup is spoiling who's been at Greymalkin all along. Okay. So this is after the Orcus War. This is after the events of the fall of X. So just so you know, this is during the time when the X-Men are picking up from the ashes. And you have the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters that has been taken over and has been transformed into Greymalkin Prison. And it's a prison for mutants, and it's overseen by this character named Karina Ellis. And both the X-Men teams, Uncanny and Adjectiveless, have run-ins with this person. This story brings back a character from Kelly Thompson's run on Gambit and Rogue, which, by the way, if you haven't read it, I hope one day they bring it back. And she comes back at the very beginning. This is Xandra Niramani. And I'm not going to say who she is, but she is someone that is very important to Professor Xavier. So who has been hiding at Greymalkin? Who's been living in that vault? A lot of people guessed, including myself from issue number 1, and that is Professor Xavier. This whole crossover is Professor Xavier breaking out of Greymalkin Prison and going and trying to find this young lady, the young Niramani. And he is going through the different teams, but he has to make it to space. And as he goes through the different teams, it's kind of a way to get you to get to know these different series. Some of these have been canceled since this crossover, of course, but some of them are still ongoing. And I think the point of this was to get you hooked on a particular series. And he goes through Adjectiveless X-Men, he goes through Uncanny X-Men, and there's a lot of fighting because then you have the government teams that step in and going, hey, Professor Xavier belongs to us, so give him up. And you have his faithful students that are always like, nah, that's not going to happen. Plus, you've got new characters that are showing up through here. I mean, you've got Magic and Temper who are not new, but they're kind of like the young generation of the Adjectiveless X-Men. And then you've got the Louisiana team that have new characters like Calico and Jetter and Ransom and Death Dream, I think that's what he goes by. So it is kind of cool in that way that you get to see the new characters show up through here, including Exceptional X-Men. I think Eve Ewing's Exceptional X-Men has the most new characters besides White Queen and Cape Pride. You have Melee, you have Axo, you have Bronze. Oh, who's the other guy? There's another character too. And then, of course, Iceman showing up through there. But that's what this is. Professor X breaks out, and he wants to get to space. There's something very important in this golden ball, golden egg, and that's all I will say about this crossover. In the back, we do have variant covers. Now, the story does not end here. I will say that. There's a certain crossover that happened within all of Marvel Comics, and it was this past summer, and that is Imperial. So you can see what the setup for Imperial is through this book right here. And that is X-Manhunt. 208 pages, $24.99. And we are at that point of the video where we take a look at the spines of the books coming out this week. So, also a reminder to hit that like button, please. It goes a long way for us here on the channel. Small thing you can do, but it does mean the world to us. Alright, let's continue with this overviews. Star Wars Darth Vader Modern Era Epic Collection Volume 2. What do you think they're gonna call this besides Vader Down? Oh my gosh. This week, I swear. You had Hawkeye coming out. You've got this. You've got Thor. How do I even pick what the best pick of the week is? You know what? I'm gonna cheat a little bit. If you haven't read this, oh my gosh, this is it. This is such a great story. One of the best Star Wars, not just best Marvel, Disney era of Star Wars. This is awesome. Vader kicks so much ass in this. Jason Aaron, Kieran Gillen, of course, are the main writers that kick it off, but it is Kieran Gillen's run on Vader. And artwork in here mostly by Salvador La Roca, with also Mike Deodato Jr. doing some of the art. And then you've got lettering by Joe Caramagna and colors by Frank Martin and Edgar Delgado. Previously, and spoilers, I know it's Vader, and I know it takes place after A New Hope and before Empire Strikes Back, but I do have to talk about some of these stories because this is canon and also not in the movies. But first, we got to talk about what's collected in here. Collected in here is Darth Vader 13 through 25, Darth Vader Down #1, and of course, 2 issues of Star Wars, 13 and 14, that are part of the Vader Down storyline. You might have heard that name, 416 pages, by the way. And this one here retailing for $49.99. You may have heard that name, and you might have heard people talk about it. You might have seen a list pop up, even AI popping up a list of the best Vader stories. It truly is. Maybe I'm hyping it up too much. I don't know. Nor do I care. It's just my honest opinion. And I try to stay neutral when doing overviews, but when you have a badass story like this, it's hard not to get excited. All right, what is Vader Down? What are we talking about here? So, after he finds out who this mysterious rebel was, this pilot, this little boy that destroyed the Death Star, Darth Vader, ends up encountering a fleet of X-Wings. So they have this huge fight at the, goes on for some pages. And you'll see here amazing artwork. This is Mike Deodato Jr. right here. And what ends up happening is that Vader ends up crash landing onto this desolate planet. It's, these freaking names from Star Wars. Brogas Bas, something like that. So now it's like Vader by himself. So what's going to happen? The rebels are like, hey, let's take this guy out. Vader is down, and he is not with his fleet. He's not with anybody. It is now the time to take this chance to kill this guy that is feared by the Empire, like across the galaxies. I want to save some of the art for you to see how he gets out of certain situations. It was the very first Marvel Star Wars crossover, and oh my gosh. Every time I read it, I forget how awesome Kieran Gillen's Darth Vader run is. I loved it. Plus, you get Dr. Aphra in there with the murder droids, with BD-1 and 000, and you finally get to see a fight. Something that we all wanted to see since the first appearance of Black Chrysanthemum, and that is the fight between him, or Black Chrysanthemum, and Chewbacca. And it's a brutal fight too. It's not one of these couple of pages, duke 'em out type of fights. It's a brutal fight. And it's all in the middle of this big fight against Vader with the rebels. Oh man, it's so good. All right, that's the first story in here. The big crossover. The second storyline in here, Vader is sent, because, spoilers, he gets away, right? Nobody kills him. You know that, because he shows up in Empire Strikes Back. That's not much of a spoiler. But there are stories within the stories. So Vader is sent to this place called Sholtarun to help out with a rebellion, because the Empire needs some of the manufacturing that is taking place there. So he ends up going there and kicking the crap out of these rebels. He's sent there by the Emperor. This is a little bit different of a mission, because who he ends up finding here is somebody named Silo. And Silo is kind of like the villain of the villain in the story. So if you have Vader, and you're telling a story about Darth Vader, who's evil and a bad guy, right? Who's going to be his villains? The rebellion? The good guys? So what they do is create characters like that. But it kind of makes sense to have characters like Silo appear through here, especially once you start seeing the connection between him and Vader. And then, of course, you have characters like Thanoth that appear through here, and just amazing imagery throughout all this. And then what is the end game of Dr. Aphra? Keep in mind, this is before Dr. Aphra launches as... No, I think by now, does she have her own ongoing series? I think it just started by these issues right here. It's starting to kick off. So Silo has actually ties to Vader because he's the one that designed the suit that Darth Vader wears. So he becomes a huge threat to Vader. Like, if anybody can turn the suit off, it's this guy. So he makes for a really cool villain. I want to show you all one of my favorite covers of all time. That is by Juan Jimenez right here from issue number 25. I love that cover. Look at the amount of detail on the Death Star as it becomes Vader's helmet. Gone way too soon. Man, I love this guy. He was a artist from Argentina, but of course had worked with Jodo on a lot of stuff, like Meta Barons, and had done his own stuff published by Humanoids. But anyway, he did that cover. So this wraps up really the Kieran Gillen era of Vader, and then in the back we have some variant covers here with Jackson, not Bucky O'Hare. That was actually done by Chip Zdarsky, Francesco Francavilla, Michael Cho, Cliff Chang, and they always credit who the artist is here. Lots of issue 25 variant covers. There was a big deal. Adi Granov's cover is pretty badass too. And the toy covers here by John Tyler Christopher. Kieran Gillen's writer. Oh, that's cool. The writer's notes are included in here. They're included in the omnibus too. And then the goodbye letter from Kieran Gillen as he's about to ship over to Dr. Aphra. But that is Darth Vader Modern Era Epic Collection Volume 2. 416 pages and retailing for $49.99. Last but certainly not least is the Marvel Masterworks, the latest Marvel Masterwork, and that is The Mighty Thor, Volume 24. And let's get this out of the dust jacket. And the flaps. And your end sheets here. Mighty Thor, what it collects, Walter Simonson, Alan Selenitz. So in here you do have the writings of course, Walter Simonson, but also Alan Selenitz. And that is such an awesome story. Bob Harris, and then art and painted colors by Charles Vess. Also, Sal Buscema doing his first Thor work while Walter Simonson is writing the stories, and then later on that kind of becomes the ongoing team with his big brother, Big John Buscema, doing the Annual 13, Butch Guice doing the pencils, Bob Layton inks, John Workman lettering, and colors by Christy Shelley and George Russo's. Collected in here is Thor 349 to 359 and Annual number 13. As well as, for the first time, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't think it's been collected anywhere else, Marvel graphic novel number 15. I don't think it's ever been collected. And that is The Raven Banner, A Tale of Asgard. Beautiful introduction here from Walter Simonson, and something I love that he does here towards the middle is, I should have mentioned this in my first introduction in Volume 23, but I should have talked about the design of his Surtur and where he drew inspiration from. Talking about the stories in here, I suggest reading the stories first and then going back to looking at his introduction. He doesn't spoil a lot, but there are some things in there that he does that are a little bit different than you might be used to when you're reading Thor, because his Thor really changed, especially the whole dynamic between Thor, Donald Blake, and Asgard and Midgard. Okay, so we talked about what's collected in here. Oh man, this is so hard to talk about without going into heavy spoilers. So you have this ongoing Surtur story that's happening here. You have, in this issue, primarily it is Odin telling the stories here about him and his brothers, who are they? Ve and Vili, I think. And then, of course, the big fight against Surtur. So Thor, during this time, really takes a step back for some of these stories. Beta Ray Bill showing up. You know, I think you can probably tell, I almost gave it to Vader down, but I mean, this is Walter Simonson's Thor with original colors. Beta Ray Bill, Ragnarok and Roll part 1 and 2 are in here. Oh, this gets the seal of approval. Come on, this is just too good. So yes, there is a huge fight between Asgard, Surtur, and what is finally coming. And that is something that has been building up since his first issue, and that is Ragnarok. So aspects of this, of course, have been used for the movie, in case you've seen Thor Ragnarok. Not as funny as that, not as comical as that. Ironic that this is a comic and I'm saying it's not as comical, but it's true. Because this is a lot of drama, and it makes for some really good drama, or at least it did for a teenage kid. I love this right here. This is the finale, the grand finale, and he actually shows pages as to how he was going to actually end it. For Asgard, for Midgard, for myself. Oh, I love that line, man. There's so much good stuff in here. And then we have the epilogue, so let's get to that. And this is I think it's the Icy Hearts, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, the annual that's in here. This is the one with the fight against Mephisto and Ulik the Troll, and drawn by the legendary Big John Buscema. It's always good to see him fighting off against Mephisto. And then we have Sal Buscema doing this fill-in issue right here. But also, this one is written by Walter Simonson, too. And this is, oh gosh. I can't remember the name of this one, but this one has been collected in the omnibus. This one is not collected in the omnibus. This is from issue 356. This is where Walter Simonson ended up taking a break from Thor, both in art and writing. So this one is written by Bob Harris, Butch Geist doing the art in here, and it is a showdown between Hercules and Thor, but done in a unique fashion. And then, of course, Walter Simonson coming back to the book, too, with a new deal from an old deck. I think that's what this one is called. And showcasing, like, the new status quo for both Midgard and Asgard, and the character of Donald Blake, L'Oreal playing a huge part in this, and the betrayal, if you know, you know. And that leads into this. Or actually, it doesn't lead, it continues, right? Walter Simonson is still writing the stories, but wrapping up some of the plot points that he started at the beginning. This right here is something I have never read. I've never read this. And it blew me away, both because, I don't know if it's not really a Thor story. So this is the Raven Banner. It is fantastic. It's set in the Marvel Universe version of Asgard, so you will see some characters showing up through here, but it really doesn't fit. And I both love and hate that, because you'll see when you see characters pop up, you're like, oh, that's right, this is Marvel. Because this is really such a beautiful story, it could stand by itself. So the Raven Banner is the banner of victory for Asgard. And there's a legend that says that the holder of the banner will lead the forces to victory. And yet, the fates decreed that the bearer will end up dying. So, the banner holder's this guy named Grim Magnus. And he falls in a battle, and then seeks on to pass on that banner to his son, Greyval. But Greyval's not there at the battle. So, the trolls end up tricking him into attending a feast and delaying him from the battle, and then Greyval ends up breaking free, and he realizes that the trolls have taken the Raven Banner. So that's what this is. Even though Graven knows that the bearer of the banner is fated to death, and he's seeking to avoid it, it's all about legacy and what that means. And you will see characters, like I mentioned, from the Marvel Universe in here, from the Thor Asgardian universe through here, as a reminder that, hey, this is still a Marvel story, even though it doesn't feel like one. Beautifully painted by Charles Vess. I think his art truly fits these type of stories from Marvel, like these standalone graphic novels. And yes, this does read like a standalone graphic novel. This really does. Because, I mean, there are others that that was the point of the graphic novel line, was to be standalone. Back here, you do have the Marvel H article on the Raven Banner, A Tale of Asgard. And you have Ziggy Pig and Silly Seal pin up over here by Terry Austin with Thor. Charles Vess does a lot of these from Marvel Fanfare number 20. And this piece right here, that actually looks different because the final piece for issue 359 looks like this. So there was more to that piece at first. And then this right here is the Secret History of the Great Surtur War. So these are panels, original panels that he wanted to use. And then when it was redrawn later on for issue 351. So I think he did like 27 pages. And then he kind of he ended up redrawing them. This is from the cover for volume 2. Oh, that's right. There were, I think it was, Thor Legends volume 2, Walter Simonson. I thought they were called Visionaries. Introduction here from Thor Legends by Ralph Macchio. Trade paperback editions, the omnibus edition, and then the biographies on these wonderful creators. So this particular book has a total, here, let's look at the binding, just of 392 pages. And it is sewn binding like the rest of them. And retails for $75. I think there's one more Masterwork that comes out towards the end of December. And then it's taking a break. So hopefully, hashtag save the Masterworks. But as of now, that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count of each of these books. In the comments down below, let me know what you are picking up, what you're hoping will get an omnibus edition one day. Of course, that's stuff by Jeff Loeb. How would I map that? I guess I would put that with the Cullen Bunn stuff. They would have to redo the Mark Miller omnibus. Maybe they can do Mark Miller and Jeff Loeb and Cullen Bunn. Oh my gosh, but then there's... Anyway, sorry, I'm mapping things in my head as I'm doing the outro. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that like button on the way out. It really does mean the world to us. I'm out of here. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.